Hey everyone, in this video we're going to look at how to modify outfit meshes to combine them together. On your screens is the model we're going to be using today. The first thing I'm going to do is disable some of the elements so we could focus only on the specific items. I'll leave only the boots, pants, and the jacket on. Let's all disable all the animations as well. Our goal today is to tuck the jacket into the pants. This can be achieved through the Unreal Engine built-in tools and plugins, such as the skeletal mesh editing tools, but we don't use them in our studio for a number of reasons. That's why we're going to show you our personal workflow for this task. First, we need to locate the assets that correspond to the jackets and the pants and export them as FBX files. So we go to the blueprints details and search for the items. Then we select both the jackets and the pants and export them through Assets Actions. We don't need to change anything in the export options. In order to stick to the dimensions and sizes, it's best to export the mesh itself. It's not the body asset that we need, but the metahuman man. We'll export it following the same steps. So we're going to modify our assets in Blender. This tool is my personal favorite, but you can opt for any other 3D graphics tool that you like best. I will now switch to Blender. It's an open source and free to download software tool. We're using the latest version as of this recording. But essentially, if you're using previous or later versions, you should be able to follow this workflow as well. As a caveat, this is not a Blender tutorial, so we're not going in-depth, we're not given in-depth breakdowns of its features. We're here with a specific task, which is to modify our meshes so that they could work smoothly in the Unreal Engine. So let's start a new project. We'll delete all these objects. I'll do it either through Object menu or by pressing the X key. You can also collapse the viewport. And now we will import our files. We hover over to File, Import, navigate to FBX. Then we locate the files, select them all. I don't change any operator presets here. And finally click on Import FBX. The files are in the scene now. Let's get down to editing them. To zoom in and out, simply scroll the mouse wheel. Holding the Shift key while scrolling allows you to pan the viewports. Additionally, holding the scroll wheel lets you rotate the view. Also, by holding the period key, you can focus on a specific mesh. Now let's set up shading so it's easier for us to view the meshes. Navigate to Viewport, Shading in the top right corner and select Random. And then choose a matte cap for better visuals. So this is what we get as a result. In your case, the colors might differ depending on the object's names. In the right-hand panel, we have the outliner where you can organize your project's collections and folders. It's pretty much the same as the one in Unreal Engine. I want to note here that by default, Unreal Engine measures things in centimeters, while Blender uses meters. But you don't need to worry about unit conversion because certain transformations get baked into meshes when they are being converted from Unreal Engine to Blender formats. So first step is to separate the target meshes from their parent ones. Select all the meshes and go to the Object menu, browse to Parent, choose Clear Parent and Keep Transformation. This will break down the hierarchy into separate components. There are 3 skeletal components that are essentially identical, because our character and the assets share the same skeleton. Unlike in Unreal Engine, where a skeletal mesh is by design linked to multiple skeletal meshes, in Blender each mesh has its own skeleton. So basically we can stick to the Unreal Engine's logic and ditch extra skeletons. We'll select and delete them. These slots are empty now and are useless, and we're going to delete them as well. Okay, we're almost done with our preparations. We need to make sure that our skeletal meshes are going to function the same way they did before we applied any changes to them. So we need to verify that they are properly attached to the skeleton. We head over to Object Mode in the top left corner and select Pose Mode. That will allow us to manipulate the bones. To display them, navigate to Asset Details, click on Viewport Display and enable in Front. The viewport is now displaying the entire skeleton, which looks a little weird, but I can explain this by the difference in bone orientation and formats between the EU and Blender. And these differences, though, are not going to influence our results. Now, let's try and move the bones. I'll select this gizmo and move this arm. The bones can be manipulated, but the mesh didn't even budge. So what's the deal here? The issue is that not all of the meshes are attached to the skeleton at this point. During the import, the only mesh that was attached to the skeleton was the pants. So if I go back to Pose Mode and try to move a leg bone, we can see that the pants are following the bone movement. What do we need to do to attach the assets to the skeleton? And we're going to do this by using modifiers under the wrench icon in this panel. The current active modifier is root.002. Its icon is red, which tells us that there's an error. To fix it, we grab this eyedropper and move it either over the root component in the outliner or the skeleton. And the character follows the bone movement. Repeat this action for the jacket as well. Now our character's movements are fully aligned with the skeletons. Let's select a random bone and move it. everything looks nice now. To reset the transformations, I'll select all of the bones, we'll go to Pose up top and Clear Transform. All this will reset all the temporary poses we've set earlier. Now we've established all the assets are attached to the skeleton, which is going to be super important during the export later. Let's now switch back to object modes and hide the bones so they don't get in the way of our task. Let me remind you that we want to tuck the jacket into the pants. There are actually many ways to do that, but today we're looking at my go-to method of approaching this type of task. It differs from other approaches in that it handles objects' geometry with great care. In other words, it doesn't lead to significant mesh deformations that could distort the appearance of textures. So let's home in on the tucking area. I'll select the jacket and switch to sculpt mode. Depending on the Blender's version you're using, the tools will be located either on the left side or at the bottom, as in the latest version. And the main brush we're going to be using is called Elastic Grab. What it does is allow you to grab vertices and change their positions without overstretching the material. We can now hide the panel with brushes and expand the Elastic Grab. So let's get down to it. I'll switch over to the front view mode by either pressing 1 on the keyboard or by clicking this green ball on the axis. So we want to tuck in the jackets and at the same time avoid distorting the geometry of other parts around it. Like the arms, for example. So that's where a mask comes in handy. I'll hold the B key to start it and I'm going to drag it over the waist area. Now the mask needs to be inverted, so we navigate to its menu at the top and click Invert Mask. The mask has somewhat rough edges that I'm going to smooth out now. I'll go to Mask menu and select Smooth Mask. In the mask filter, we can set the number of smoothing iterations. Alternatively, you can do that by pressing the Shift-R combination. And now the masked area is a more pliable material that we're going to be gradually tucking into the pants with small movements starting from the jacket's bottom part. These bones are in my way, that's why I'm going to hide them by pressing this eye icon in the outliner. And now I'm going to slowly keep pushing the jacket underneath the pants. Even though this brush is very effective, you might want to avoid sudden moves. So keep that in mind. And there's a nice feature to use when you want to shift an area along a normal. You can hold the Control key to pull the material along that normal in both directions. We need to be careful with how deep we push the jacket in. If we overdo it, we're risking driving the jacket into the body too deep, as in this spot here. If I hide the pants, you'll see that the parts of the jacket are immersed inside the character's body. This does not conflict with our final goals, so I'll keep going and I'll be rotating the model to get a good look at the process from all possible angles. Overall, I'm pretty satisfied with how the work is going. There's a couple of overlaps though. For a more detailed breakdown of how to deal with overlaps, check out our previous video. And now the pants. This time, we're going to pull them outward, because they should gain some volume when the jacket is tucked into them. So, pulling on the pants too hard might cause the buttons to stretch out, and we want to avoid their deformation. That's why we're going to isolate them. I'll switch to edit mode. This mode allows us to manipulate individual vertices. I'm gonna highlight all the vertices that present the buttons and hide them. That way we're going to be working with the pants only without distorting the buttons. For this you can select any of the buttons elements, be it a vertex, face or edge mode. And by pressing the L key, highlight the area connected to that single element. And then press H to hide the area in the viewport. We're not deleting the buttons, we're just hiding them temporarily to bring them back later. I'm going to hide the other button as well. If I enable toggle X-ray mode at the top, it'll reveal other elements that need to be hidden as well. So I'll highlight them as well and hide them by pressing L and H. Now we can rest assured that we're not going to modify the buttons. Now back to the sculpt mode. And here I'm going to slowly work my way around the waistline. The movements should be very subtle, so don't hesitate to revert the changes through Ctrl Z if you think you've overshot it. Like for example in this spot, pulling the pants out won't do it. I'll get back to it and tinker with the jacket's geometry later. The modifications we're making may not translate very well into animations and skinning, because we're virtually shifting the object's geometry from its initial position. That's why to try to move it without changing its vertical level. If I pull the pants down, we're going to interact with the skinning at this spot, which most likely is going to lead to all kinds of distortions. So it's best that you stick to horizontal movements, either outward or inward, bringing vertical shifts to a minimum. To quickly switch between objects and the sculpt modes, hover the brush over another object and press the Alt-Q key combo. Using the F key, you can adjust the size of the brush. So there might be some overlaps here and there. Okay, I'm pretty satisfied with the result. There's a tiny overlap though. The jacket is clipping through the pants. I can fix it by pulling the jacket upward. But I'll follow my own recommendation and tuck the jacket even further so it doesn't pop out during the animation. When the pants are tucked in, we need to bring back the buttons. Let's switch back to edit mode. The jacket is lit up because it's the last object we were working with. Back to object mode to select the pants now, and then back to edit mode. And now to resurface the buttons, we press the Alt-H combo. This box in the bottom left corner tells us they're back, but we still can't see them. I'll enable the transparency mode, and you can see the buttons are in their initial position. They stay there even though we were moving the pants. Now we need to bring them forward without deforming them in the process. So we select them, highlight them, and we simply apply linear repositioning, just like this. And then we can pick an individual button and affix it to the pants so it doesn't float. Be careful not to alter the geometry of objects too drastically, as it may negatively reflect on skinning. So this is our final result. Now we need to export it. First things first, we're going to select one of the assets for export along with its corresponding mesh. We have to make sure to have the assets modifier set to armature. The modifier will usually change its name based on the imported skeleton. If your modifier disappears, you can press Add, then Deform, and Armature, and select Roots under Object. Let's now switch to Pose mode and verify that the skeletal mesh and skeletal asset are aligned. And now it's time to export our objects. Even though you have the option of batch exporting, I strongly advise against it, as it will export the entire model as a single object, leaving little flexibility for breaking it down into individual objects in Unreal Engine later on. That's why I'll select the pants and roots and export them as an FBX file. Here I'll select the destination folder and give it a name. I'll go with pants. No, make it SKM pants. As for the export options, make sure to have these settings enabled. Limit to selected objects, shift select mesh and armature, transform is left as is. Under geometry, smoothing is set to face to preserve attribute information such as smooth groups, sharp edges, and so on. Disable animation. Also uncheck add leaf bones because we don't want unnecessary small bones cluttering our metahuman skeleton. Okay, once everything is configured, you can save these settings as a new preset for future use, and then click Export. And now we're going to follow the same steps to export the jacket. Select the jacket and its skeletal mesh, then press F4 and F to bring up Export window, then give it a name. The rest of the settings remain the same after the first export. We're not going to export the character, but if you want to do that for future modifications, you could do that too. So let's go back to Unreal Engine now. We're going to swap these characters' old assets for the modified ones. Okay, I'm going to create a new folder in Outfits. I'll call it New Meshes, and then click on Import. I'll track down the modified assets. I'll select them both as they share the same skeleton. Then press Open, and in the Import Options window, we have to pick the MetaHuman skeleton because that's the one we were working with today. But if you modify assets for mannequins, you're gonna have to select their skeleton. Under Advanced, I'll usually uncheck the Create Physics Assets, and for normal import method, opt for Import Normals and Tangents. We don't need new materials and textures, so I'll disable them, and everything else stays as is. And finally, press Import All. The assets are in the project. Let's take a look at them. I don't spot any radical deformations. Looks like we did a great job. Let's give ourselves a pat on the back. We'll save the asset. Let's examine the pants now. They look nice as well. Nothing seems to be missing. We'll save it too. And now let's change the character into the assets we just modified. But before we do that, I need to mention a few things about our workflow. For automation and quality presentation, we use certain scripts in Unreal Engine to showcase our assets quickly and effectively. And to integrate your custom or our custom clothing elements with scripted characters, you could follow these steps. So first, locate the assets data table in the blueprints folder. Then in the table, you need to find the file that corresponds to the appearance of our character. Within the file is a list of assets that are on our character right now. And this is where we can swap the pants. Go to Content Browser, New Meshes, and drag and drop here both the pants and jacket. And press Save. I'm going to slightly shift the model to refresh the scene and apply the changes. The jacket is tucked into the pants. The result's pretty good. I'm satisfied. I'm going to animate him to check if we did a good job in that area as well. We're going to make our character walk forward. Then I'll put it in slow-mo. Looks pretty decent. There are some overlaps on the sides, or it's just the pants glitching a little. I'm going to switch to a more intense animation, for instance, run, to get a better idea of what the issue is. I think it has to do with the lighting. Those patches look like shadows of some sort cast by other body parts. You can try other lighting modes to get a better idea. So if you decide to modify your character's appearance, we recommend using this method. I'll highlight again that you can use any 3D software that supports the FBX formats. We can vouch for other formats as we mostly rely on the tried and true FBX format. And as a side note, I'd also like to add that if you are sure that your model's configuration is going to remain fixed and you're not planning on making further changes, if you know that the jacket is going to be always tucked in, you can make this configuration permanent and delete the unnecessary elements. And I'm going to show you how you can do that. Let's select the jacket, then I'll jump to edit mode, and then I'm going to select the part that's tucked in. I'll need to hide the pants, go to select, choose none, and switch to transparency to select those vertices that we don't need. We're just going to simply delete them. We can expand the area, and I'll bring the pans back to check if that I didn't overshot. Yep, the selection sticks out a little. If I delete it now, then there's going to be a gap, or we're going to need to unselect a few vertices. I'll select the circular selection tool, and holding the mouse wheel, I'll glide over some vertices to deselect them. Then I'll switch back to the transparency mode by pressing Shift Z and continue deselecting. Okay, now I'll press X and select faces. Deleting through faces preserves more of the object's geometry. Let's take a look at the result. Yep, everything looks really nice, and now the export to Unreal Engine. Select the mesh, root, export. I'll override the previous file. To apply the changes in Unreal, right-click on the jacket and select Re-import. And this is our jacket without the part that goes into the pants. I'm going to play the animation, as I suspected it's just a fold in the pants and not a defect caused by the jackets. And that's it for this tutorial. If you have any questions or suggestions, feel free to reach out. Catch you in the next one.